Am I saying your last name right? Pradier?
Pradier, that's it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Am I saying your last name right? Ooh, we are live. We are live. Oh shoot.
Oh, very cool.
All right. So I got recorded making double checking, making sure I say your name right. But no, April Pradier with us in the DC market, real estate investor, all kinds of different things. But thank you for making time. And you and I were just chatting about all about finding the deal and the number. The numbers tell the story, and there are deals to find right now. And commercial is something that's going to be ever changing, and maybe some hurdles to come in the market. So,
Yeah.
can't wait to dig in. So, right now, what's the biggest thing that you're looking at right now in terms of opportunity?
Well, I mean, I'm looking for motivation, and I think that the story has not changed. It doesn't matter if we're in a booming market or we're in an inflationary market. As I was just saying maybe 5 minutes ago, it is about the numbers and how you evaluate the deals. Now, of course, you're going to be aware and you want to kind of have an idea as to, well, what is going on in the market. We have low inventory, we have high inflation, retail is shot to crap, office is shot to crap, right? Pay attention to those things. But you see, this is where a lot of people will run away from the fire. This is where, as an investor, you're supposed to run to the fire, right? Put on your fireman hat and your gear. And the gear essentially is you running the numbers and you being the problem solver and the solution maker, right? So, one thing that I was just saying that I just want to reiterate here, I don't care if it's residential or commercial. You want to look at it from a perspective of, okay, can I make money three different ways on the front? And can I exit three different ways on the back? So that it allows you to hedge yourself so that if you're not making the money three ways on the front, at least maybe it's two. If your exit strategies are falling short with all three, maybe you're only able to exit off of one, right? But you at least have the strategy in play because that is the planning of it. You need to plan in this market and make sure that you know what your intentions are and where you want to go.
Because I've heard you say commercial is going to be crashing or dropping now, next year, at some point, more stuff happening. So
Yeah.
if you run numbers today on a deal, and you mentioned previously retail, maybe one scenario you probably want to stay away from, but there's other things, industrial, apartment complexes, storage, other things that are out there. Can you
I
walk
would
us
say
through
yeah. I mean, well, I'll tell you right now. I mean, listen, retail has been in trouble for some time, right? Because of, Amazon and how we're doing business post COVID, right? Office also still impacted from COVID, and now, people are, or not people, businesses are trying to get their workforce to come back into the offices, and they're getting a lot of turnover because of that, right? So office is also in trouble as well, right? Um, multifamily is in trouble, right? And they're in trouble because, not because there is not a need for people to have somewhere to live, because there's a huge need, but a lot of the loans are coming past due, and a lot of people bought into syndications 3 and 4 and 5 years ago at a 2 and 3 and 4% interest rate, and they based all of their numbers off of that, and the numbers were already tight to begin with. Well, now those loans are coming due, and they're not able to pull the money out because now, as soon as they refinance, they're refinancing into 8 and 9%. That skews the entire thing. So more and more, you'll see more properties going into foreclosure that are in the large multifamily space than ever before. So the opportunity is tremendous where you can buy from the auction, possibly buy from the seller, who maybe doesn't know he's a seller yet, but he's in trouble. He's in trouble, and you have to try to figure out how you're going to do it. If you have cash right now, I know the cliche of cash is king. Cash is king, and it's because it allows you to stay away from or minimize or limit how much lending power you will need in order to get the deal done. So,
so the type of person that would take that message right there and be looking for opportunities. And then maybe it's in their marketplace, maybe it's somewhere else that they know, you know, to have that cash, right? Who is that person? So maybe it's a business owner and their business is doing well and they want to diversify and maybe have some tax incentives. Maybe it's somebody that's already in the real estate game that, you know, they just have the equity build up over time and maybe they have some ability to be able to deploy some resources.
Yeah.
But this probably wouldn't be for an entry level person, right?
No, I would say be wary in larger deals. If you're talking residentially, because most newbies are not going to jump right into commercial. They're already a little nervous to begin with, and big boy toys are not for everybody, right? So I would say, for the mentees that I'm mentoring, how I guide them in this market, because there are tons of deals, but I'm guiding them to look for the diamonds in the rough. They're a little bit harder to find. And like if whether they're doing a buy and hold or fix and flip, whatever their strategy is, you don't want to buy something that's a full gut. You don't want to buy something that's a heavy lift. You want to buy something that is cosmetic, because it allows you to put the minimal amount of money in. Even if you find some issues, it's okay. It's not going to be $100,000 worth of issues, hopefully. And it shouldn't be if they're working with me, because we're looking for those issues before we pull the trigger on buying the property, right? So no structural stuff. Like, you don't want to see cracks where you can fit, 2 quarters in there or anything like that. You want to stay away from that. Dated kitchens and bathrooms. I mean, sure, you could definitely do that depending on what your strategy is. So there is room for the newbie, but only in very specific areas, because they're not educated enough to understand what they need to get into, and they need a coach and or a mentor to guide them and hold their hand a bit so that they don't get punished in this market, because we're not in a position where we were, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Market was hot, hot, hot. It didn't matter if you made a mistake on the numbers, because you could still sell it and you still make somewhat of a profit. Well, now, depending on what market you're in, because it's going to be market dependent, the inflation is going to impact that market in different types of ways, right? So primary versus secondary versus tertiary markets is going to have a different type of economy as to how you should play in those markets. I personally look for both cash flow and appreciation, but I'm talking blasphemy to a lot of investors, right? They're specifically going to pick just one of those two things. And depending on your market, that's all you can do. So it's also going to be dependent upon your risk tolerance outside of the numbers.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple of things. One, diamond in the rough. You
Yeah.
mentioned, having multiple strategies, 3 strategies of entry and then exit,
Yeah.
um, and the numbers. And then also you mentioned inflation in different types of cities. So let's take your market. So, you got DC, right? Then you got Northern Virginia, you got the various counties of Maryland, you got Frederick, and then you got Bethesda, and then you got PG County and Charles County, and then you got Baltimore. So you got a pretty wide landscape that's quite varying in terms of the different types of real estate in the end consumer. Where are the areas that you're seeing some of your mentees or people or yourself operating in and finding opportunity?
I mean, well, the good thing about the DMV is that it's more of a primary and secondary style market, right? So the primary would be those immediate cities like Washington, D.C., right? So D.C. has always been historically known not to be impacted as much as other states when you have like recessions, right? So even though in other secondary markets, they're seeing some pain, DC not so much. You still have low days on market. You're still seeing the prices are still going up dramatically. And the market is a great market to be in. But again, it's about your buying right. So for my mentees, I specifically steer them away from Baltimore, where they can find the $100,000 houses, um, because it's actually a lot of work. Whatever you're, even if Ohio too. But like when you're going into those markets where you're like, okay, I just want to buy a house because it's 60,000 or 80,000, it's not about that. The house could be $1 million, but what is the equation here, right? And most people, and I do too for that matter, use the equation of, 70% of the ARV minus your renovation costs. But when you're buying a property that's 100K or less, the likelihood of you being able to put 20 or $30,000 into it to flip it or to keep it is close to not happening. I mean, because there are going to be a lot of issues with the plumbing, with the electric, the foundation, the whole house is going to be outdated. I mean, you're guaranteed to spend over 100,000 plus with that type of a property. So that would mean that the sale would have to be over 300, $1,000, right? So that doesn't work as well. But when your numbers are a little bit larger, like here in DC, you can purchase a property for $300,000 and put some work into it and sell it for 450, 500,000, which is still first time home buyer. If you wanted to sell it and flip it, if you wanted to hold it, well, I mean, the rental numbers are astronomical. I mean, I have a couple of properties, of course, here in DC, one in particular in Capitol Hill that I'm just going to just mention. It was a fantastic deal that I bought maybe 7, 8 years ago. But it's a duplex. I have a 1 bedroom downstairs and a 2 bedroom upstairs. The 1 bedroom brings in $3,000 a month in rent.
The
In rent
one bedroom.
for a 1 bedroom, and it's roughly 600 square feet. So, DC is like a New York. So as far as like your appreciation, it appreciates very quickly. And as far as your cash flow, the cash flow is really, really good, if you can buy right. And that's the whole story. And that's what I'm telling my mentees. They're also going into Maryland as well. And they aren't seeing as much appreciation, but they are seeing the cash flow if they want to hold on to the property, because the rents are also pretty good in the secondary market as well, which, I mean, that makes sense. If your rent, I'm making this, and I'm making this up, but I'm making this up. If your rent for 1 bedroom in any given area is $3,000, which it does change, it's 4,500 in Georgetown, right? For a 1 bedroom. So, but let's just stay with that 3,000. If you have a 1 bedroom that's 3,000 in DC, but you can, drive 20 minutes into Maryland, nice suburban area, and you get that same 1 bedroom for 2,100, you're getting the best of both worlds. And you might even be getting more square footage as well. So
So
they're doing both, Maryland,
finding
Virginia.
finding the deal.
Finding the deal.
How do you do that? If
Anyway,
I've got a full-time job and I'm gonna work weekends and work on at night to, because you're doing it for a reason. Why do you want to expend all the energy that you may not have? You're doing it for a reason because you see some type of value or purpose or a light at the end of the tunnel to get out of the rat race, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I mean, how you find the deals, there are so many, many ways. I'll give you maybe like just a few. One would obviously be the MLS. And I know that, some people go, oh no, stay away from the MLS. There are tons of deals on the MLS. Very specifically, people who have like estate sales. Those people just want to sell it fast, and they may have the property free and clear because maybe their mom or their dad or big mama or however you're looking at it, passed away. They've been sitting on what's called a non-performing asset, and now they need to let it go because they're not interested in keeping it and they're not educated enough in real estate in order to hold it and maybe, rent it out or do other strategies with it. So they just want, take the money and run. So there are plenty of deals like that also on the MLS. I would say connecting outside of your network to get with like wholesalers, which I think for the newbie, that's a little bit difficult at first because they don't have those circles. So it's a matter of expanding your circles and expanding your mindset in order to realize that, if I'm a surgeon and I'm a doctor, I'm not going to sit around and have conversations with plumbers. I'm going to talk to doctors, right? So if you're in real estate, then that means that you need to be talking to people who are in real estate and seeing what are they doing. And then they introduce you to people and they become a value add to you and you become a value add to them. One final way, which again, there are many, many different ways. I'm just going to name these highlighted three, would be social media. So social media is huge for that. You could go on right now as a newbie and just say one sentence I'm interested in buying houses. Please DM me. Depending on your network, somebody knows somebody through this whole 6 degrees of separation, which is really now 2 degrees of separation, that is in trouble with their house, or they have a probate situation that's not on the market. Off market is always going to be the best deal, but you have to put yourself out there in order for someone to know that you're interested in off market deals. So those are the three, I think the high level best ways to do it, but there are at least 4 or 5 other ways that you could definitely find the deals.
Motivated seller. What are some of the signals that you may be able to, either if it's a conversation or other data? What should someone be looking for that
A
that
lot
motivate?
of things you could be looking for, but it depends on how deep you really want to go. I would say just off of the immediate, people talk about driving for dollars, but you can also walk for dollars, right? Go in your neighborhood and just have your little 30-minute to an hour walk, turn down a street that you've never been down before in your area. You're going to see tall grass. You're going to see properties that you didn't even realize were empty because you're driving past them or not at all. And that potentially could be a motivated seller. So once I see those types of properties, the next thing I do is I want to do a little bit of research and due diligence to determine, well, do they have any violations, right? All that's public information. Could you look and see, have they paid all their utility bills? The big one is going to be water. If the water is severely behind and delinquent, they're motivated. They're in trouble.
Okay.
The next thing would be their taxes. Have their taxes been paid? I mean, if their taxes aren't paid, depending on what municipality you're in or what city you're in, um, within 12 months, in some cases 24 months or 18 months, they'll put your property on the tax sale list. And you could always look that up. You don't have to wait for the tax sale. You can just look up and see all these properties and reach out to those owners. They are all motivated. And that's just one way. I mean, so many different ways.
Okay.
When we're talking about like real estate and real estate investing, I think a lot of people got kind of caught up in Fix That House, right? And they're watching TLC and thinking that they can like, I'm going to start flipping properties and it's going to take me oops, knocked off my it's going to take me 30 minutes to fix this property up. All of that is a true fallacy. It's a fallacy. There are at least 30 different strategies that one can do with one property. And it really comes down to let the property speak to you. Let it tell you, oh, please flip me. No, hold me, hold me tight. I don't know. It's going to tell you a lot of different things. But it comes down again to the numbers.
Yeah. So
The,
numbers talk.
the
Numbers
numbers
talk.
numbers talk, bullshit walks. I should have that on a t-shirt. Because it really is real. And then you'll have some people who are motivated, but they're kind of like living in a la land of like, okay, I owe the bank. They're getting ready to foreclose on my property. My utilities are off. Uh, numerous things are happening. Their health is, going down, and they want $1 million for a property that's worth 200,000. Right.
Right.
So it's a matter of gauging people in their motivation, because some people go through these emotional tiers of, okay, I'm motivated, but I want to get the top dollar for this property, even though it's in bad shape. You have to go follow up, and follow through. That's the huge one here, as far as like a lesson. You have to learn how to skill yourself with follow up and follow through, because someone who is motivated may not be motivated enough today, but give them another month or two. They'll be really motivated then, because nobody wants to buy that property for $1 million. They want to buy it for 200 because that's what the number says.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bring people into their reality. Or, the ego comes in and people are like, well, forget it. I'll just lose the property, which sometimes that happens too.
So you mentioned earlier the DC market has some extra stability compared to other markets. The government's obviously here, a lot of
Yeah.
employees and naturally insulated. So if someone's thinking to themselves, hey, you know what, I don't want to buy as a first time home buyer, for example, I don't want to buy. what if prices go down? I spent, 5 years to save my 20 grand to be able to have for a down payment. I don't want to put it all in there and waste it.
Well, see,
What
but that's the miseducation of the buyer, though, because it doesn't matter. If you're in, if you bought a house and you bought it at 8%, and you put your 20% down and it depreciates 50,000, 100,000. Was your intent to live in the property for 12 months? Was your intent to live in it for 2 years? This is where the education comes in because you're getting a 30-year loan. And in most cases, people do intend to live in their property for 30 years, even though the reality is, based off of statistics, that people tend to move from house to house every about 5 years or so, right? So even within a 5-year time span, if you bought at the top of the market and we had some type of a recession, well, these cycles are 5-year cycles. So by the time you should be ready to leave, your property should have at least rebound, or be in a position where it's gone above and beyond where you purchased it at, beyond what the recession did to it, So it's just some education.
damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because what if prices don't go down? What if they lower rates significantly next year and prices go up?
Yeah,
Then
and
then,
and that's
then
what
what?
yeah, but that's what I'm saying, because this is about supply and demand, right? So with supply and demand, if the inventory is low, it can allow for prices to go higher. Now, what helps also dictate that will be then the days on market. Because if the consumer, because of inflation, is getting a little nervous, a little scared, they get a little skittish, because the price of a tomato has gone up to $5 a tomato, right? They're going to have to prioritize. What is the main priority here? You need a roof over your head and you need food to eat. Those are your two main priorities of survival. So if they don't already have a roof over their heads, then maybe they're looking, but it comes down to, okay, do I plan to be in this place for a long time? Um, the days on market definitely will influence the price, because if you're on days on market 60 plus days, then you're naturally going to pull your price down. As soon as you pull your price down, if you have a decent property, 9 times out of 10, someone's going to put a contract on that property. I mean, I'm actually, let me tell a little story here. I mean, very, very quick. But I have a mentee who they bought right. They bought right. And they ended up running into some issues with permitting and the politics, because there's some politics. And it ended up putting them in a position where they have been holding on to this property for over a year. And they've been paying every month. And it's very expensive how they purchased the property through hard money. So now they're in a predicament where they're like, oh my gosh, I bought right. But I ran up so much, debt trying to hold on to the property. When I go to sell it, I'm going to make a profit, but it's going to be very minimal, which basically means that they could have worked for Chick-fil-A and made more, right? Or McDonald's or something, because they've been holding it the whole year and they've been paying out the whole year. So they're really not making money, even though they'll see a check, right? So their question to me is, because they see what's happening, they see that the prices are still going up. They want to hold it. They want to hold the property. But because of this past year, their credit card utilization is really, really bad. So it took what was, a 770 credit score and took it down to 580.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't refinance it, because when they go to refinance it, it's going to be some points on top of that, plus closing costs. And they need to pull money out too. So they're like in a major pickle, as to how they're going to do this. We talked, they do have a solution. But I say all that story just to say, you can buy right, and things will happen, but the price is still going up. So you just have to make decisions along the way. And people want to buy it regardless. They're going to buy it at the current price. They'll buy it 2 years from now when the price has gone up $100,000, because that's what it's going to do. Um, Yeah, I mean the market will have people who want to buy always. Always. It'll just be dependent upon what's going on with your house and what type of deal are you offering them at that specific time.
Now I'm interested. Are you okay sharing what the solution is,
Yeah, sure.
or was?
Yeah, sure. So at the end of the day, there were only going to be two options, right? One would be to sell it because they have an interested buyer. And when they sell the property, they would make $100,000. However, they're in over $100,000 worth of debt. So they'd be paying out some of that debt. And my suggestion was get your utility of your credit cards, your utilization under 30%. You don't have to pay the entire thing off. You just want to incrementally drop large sums of money over the next 2 months so that your credit score can have these nice little boosts and bumps. Because if she's at 570, 580, she could easily get close to 700 in 2 to 3 months, just being strategic as to how she pays the debt and don't pay the debt completely off. Just get
Mm-hmm.
it below that 30%. And you could even, what I was telling her, because she's maxed out, she could drop it down 50% in the first month, which will automatically give her a boost, and then drop that 50 under 30%, which will give her another, it'll be a double boost because she dropped a large amount and now she's under 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Maintain that, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that was one way. The second way is I know that, she's kind of strapped for cash. Can she somehow refinance the property and bring someone in with her who has the credit score and who's not going to ask for the money, right? That could be a family member, a really close friend, someone who's just in it for the short run. Because if she can refinance the property, she can then refinance all the closing costs into all that equity that she's sitting on, and she's not going to be able to pull 100,000 out. She's not going to be able to pull 80 out, but that's okay. Maybe she's pulling out 50. Maybe she's
Mm-hmm.
pulling out 40. I don't know, but that will also help with her initial problem. Her initial problem is going to be to get that credit card debt down within a reasonable range. But then secondarily, when she pulls the money out, she also has to be very strategic, because if her intention is to then pay, the rest of the debt off, that means she has to have cash flow still built in, right? So I had her look at it from the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and probably where she needs to be scenario, what that closing cost looks like, what that cash out would look like, and then what that cash flow will look like, so that she can kind of balance out, well, okay, this will give me $800 cash flow, but I'm only going to get 40 out or whatever, right? But this will give me only $400 cash flow, but it'll give me more cash out. That's a risk tolerance that she'll have to determine. I've
Yeah.
given her the strategy, and now she has to determine how she's going to do it and what she plans to do. I'll tell you the answer. She plans to refinance it, and she just has to pick which tier she wants to refinance at as far as the cash out, so that it makes sense, so that she's still cash flowing on the deal. That was it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have this comes to mind a gentleman that I know that's doing a 1031 exchange, selling in New York and then wanting to buy somewhere else, and his utilization's tight, maxed out,
Yeah.
and having a tough time getting a loan and doesn't have the cash to pay down his credit card. So he's trying to figure out how to do the exact same thing. So the same, jigsaw puzzle.
I
So
get it. I get it. That is really a tough kind of a situation. I think, when and this is where buying right on the front end, it matters so much. But then also having a strategy, right? That exit strategy, me saying buy right on the front end, making money 3 different ways, buy right, on the back end, because when you go to exit the property, you have to know what you're doing here. So you get into pickles, and sometimes you have to max out your cards if you didn't necessarily know something. Because when you go to open up the walls, it might tell a story that you didn't realize was there. But there are ways around it. And that's where having a community of people who have maybe gone through similar circumstances and situations. They'll help you get through it. That's why the mentee called me. I'm not currently mentoring her. I mentored her previously, and she uses me as a resource every time she's in a deal, and I coach her through her deals to say, okay, yep, this is a great deal. Looks good to me. Oh, no, this is a bad deal. Or, oh, you're in this pickle. This is how you get out of it. You need the resource.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you for questions, mentorship, all that stuff, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I would say social media. So my IG is my name. So it's
Yep.
April Pradier. My Facebook also is my name, April Pradier. I have TikTok too, but definitely those two are the easiest. I'm always checking to see if anybody's messaging me, and people do on a daily basis. And then from there, we can just kind of assess where you are, determine your mindset, and then just, I can help you as best I can in that moment. And then maybe if there's a mentorship or a coaching in play, I don't take everybody, because I need people who are coachable and who like to make money. Because some
Okay.
people are forever students, right? And they just want to learn just to learn. I'm
uh,
interested in those type of people, because my mentorship and coaching is not cheap. So if you're going to come under my umbrella, I want you to have a success story very quickly. I want you to get your money back and be all in, because now not only am I a part of your network, you're now part of my network. And now we're in this whole family of network and resources where, I can connect you with people. But now I trust that you know what you're doing, right? I'm not going to, you know, um, connect people, just to connect them. It needs to all be within reason so that you know that you're dealing with good people. Good people deal with good people.
damn right. Okay. I have one more lane that I want to run down. How much time do you have? You have 5 minutes?
Yep, I got five. Yes, I got exactly five.
Okay.
Eight, really.
So I bought my first house in 2009. I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
After the crash, there was the $8,000 tax credit. I'm in a commission job, not knowing what my paycheck was going to be a month from now, let alone 6 months from now. So I bought very intentionally in a certain area in St. Louis where if anything happened, I could rent it out.
Yeah.
And then I bought the next one in 2013 and then the next one in 2017 and then kept on. I called this stair step. I just kept on buying. And then I got into multifamily and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
If I could rewind the clock, of course I should have bought more, knowing what I know now. But you can't do that.
Yeah.
So for you, what was the point in time you said, hey, like this is a thing that could work for me? What was the example or the story or the whatever that
Well,
happened to you?
interestingly enough, so my grandmother, back in the 40s, she was a real estate agent. And then eventually she opened up a convalescent home, like in an 8-bedroom house on the Gold Coast of DC. And she got that house because she was a real estate agent. So she understood the market and was educated in it. And she taught my sister and I specifically the business of real estate and of convalescent homes, which are now assisted living, right? So she's the one who kind of got me initially interested. And I wasn't interested, which was the point, because back then the houses were so busted. And it just, she's like, oh my God. And then they had this $1 sale back like in 1990. Um, and I'm like, I don't want these busted houses. And she's like, please, she's begging me, buy the house. You'll thank me later. I promise. I promise. Just, or you just pay the taxes and they're so minimal, and I wish I would have listened to her. I mean, and she promised me on her deathbed that I would get into real estate in one form, shape, or another. And yeah, she passed away a few years later, and sure as enough, those $1 houses in a busted state were worth almost $1 million. In a
What
busted
in
DC.
DC? DC?
DC, because you were talking about Georgetown, Capitol Hill, Adams Morgan. I mean, it was the creme de la creme markets. It was the main thoroughfares in DC that all lead to the Capitol that were all for sale. Beautiful Victorians. I'm talking 2 and 3,000 square feet, 200-year-old plus properties. Gorgeous. Architecture was gorgeous. But, again, I was young. And I didn't know any better. And, kids, they don't listen to their parents, and they sure the hell don't listen to grandparents either. So, you know, do I look back on those moments? Yes, because as soon as she passed away, the first house that I wanted was hers. And that got me into it. And I learned so much because I wasn't the next of kin to get that property, but nobody wanted it because it was also busted. But it was a 8-bedroom house in Rock Creek Park area, 16th Street Heights, Gold Coast of DC, which, outside of knowing what I didn't know back then that I know now, I mean, that house, very specific, I followed it all the way up till today. And I've talked to the owners because 2 owners have owned that house since then. And I've talked to them. And it's been so interesting because that house, a few years ago, sold as the highest sold house in that neighborhood, and sold for like 1.4.
Damn.
Yeah. And when all this was going on, of course, it was almost 20 years prior. Uh, I could have bought that house for like 170, 180. I mean, but my intention was never to flip it or anything. I wanted to keep the family legacy of it, and I wanted to fix it up and live in it. Right. But just going through all that process with seeing like what was going on with the house, it had so many delinquencies, and it had probate, and it had this and it had that. I learned about real estate through that one house. And I said, you know what? This is for me. This is for me. And I went out and bought my next property, did fix and flip, all trial by error. And I did well. I've never lost money. I've
Oh,
never
damn.
lost money. Yeah. But, along the way, because I didn't have any mentors or any coaches
Yeah.
then. And, I used to do it for free. I used to help a lot of people for free until I saw that they were, wasting my time and not doing anything with all the valued information that I was giving them. But yeah, it was all the way back then that I discovered, yep, this is for me.
Okay.
And
One more thing.
Mhm.
You got somebody who's 25 years old, making 6 figures plus, motivated. They believe in the mission. They believe in what the possibility is.
Mhm.
What's the blueprint? What's the best way in this market in your area in DC to be able to scale in?
Yeah. First and foremost, they need to get a coach. They need to get a coach. They need to get a mentor, or they need to attach themselves to a tribe. But as far as like a strategy goes, the Burr method is easy all day long, repeatable, scalable, and that's buy, renovate, refinance, and repeat, right? But at the same time, they need to house hack that. Because if you can live in the property, then you can get a lower interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can walk into this deal with no money. I've done a ton of $0 deals, not necessarily with that strategy, but just periods. There's so many ways of how you can do this. But then, they're already at an advantage though, because for them being young and making 6 figures, they're making a lot of money. I mean, when you house hack, is usually for the person who doesn't make a lot of money, and they're
Mm-hmm.
utilizing the other units to pay for the mortgage and potentially help them to even put a little cash in their pocket. Or even if it doesn't, if they're just paying the mortgage alone, whatever money they're making, wherever they are, they could be babysitting for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
100% of that then goes to their back pocket, right? And they're able to then take that money, build it up, and then do that strategy again in a year, and then do
Yep.
that strategy again in a year. And in, 5 years, just doing that strategy and staying with the blueprint of a year, which they don't have to do that, by the way. But if
Mm-hmm.
they did, I mean, they're sitting on 5 properties, and now all their
Yes.
properties are cash flowing on top
Yeah.
of them having a job. Another thing, and I'll say this like as my last thing, because I think that again, misconceptions, miseducation. Just because you're cash flowing, you're getting into real estate in these properties, it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, I gotta, get out of my job. I'm now making what I made in a job in my cash flow. If you have the personality and you can do both, why not double dip that and do both? Because when you become a true real estate entrepreneur, not investor, entrepreneur, then you understand that you need to delegate. A true business owner knows how to delegate the appropriate tasks to free your time up to continue to make money or to find additional monies, because now you are the CEO of your business, and that's what CEOs do. They find the money.
And that's where the tribe comes in.
That's where the tribe comes in.
Okay.
Yep.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for making time. I can't wait to dig into this again down the road, but we'll get this out there and we'll put it also some clips for you too. So thank you again.
Appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. And hit me up because I would love to get a copy of this as well.
Hell yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, April.
See ya.
Bye.